The desert stretched far and silent, its golden sands shifting under the heat of the sun. For centuries, travelers had passed across this land, speaking of hidden tombs and forgotten kings. Many tombs had been uncovered, their treasures displayed in museums. Yet deep beneath the endless dunes lay something different, something untouched. Mara adjusted the scarf around her face as the wind blew sharp grains of sand against her skin. She was not an adventurer, but a researcher, trained in decoding languages and studying ruins. Still, her heart raced when the scanners picked up strange readings beneath the sand. Her colleague, an older man named Yusuf, tapped the monitor on their portable station. "Look here," he said, pointing to a pulsing line across the screen. "This is no ordinary stone structure," the signal repeats. "It is too perfect." Mara leaned closer. The signal had rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. It pulsed every few seconds, steady and strong, as if waiting to be noticed. She whispered, "It is not natural. It is made." The team began digging, carefully removing layers of sand that had rested there for thousands of years. Soon the tips of giant blocks of stone appeared, shaped and carved with precision. Hieroglyphs ran across them, glowing faintly under the light of their lamps. Yusuf frowned. "Strange. These markings are sharper than any others we have seen, as if they were carved yesterday." Mara traced her fingers over the symbols. They were ancient Egyptian letters, but between them ran lines she had never seen before, curves of light embedded in the stone itself. It was not paint or carving. It was something far more advanced. By nightfall, the workers had uncovered a massive doorway sealed with golden plates. The door was covered with more writing, telling the story of a pharaoh long forgotten, one whose name did not appear in any history. The translation was difficult, but Mara read enough to understand the warning. "Here rests the one chosen by the stars," she whispered aloud, "guarded until the end of time. Disturb not the keepers of eternity." The word sent a chill down her spine. She looked at Yusuf, but he only shook his head. "Superstition. Every tomb has warnings. It is meant to scare thieves." Yet Mara could not ignore the signal that still pulsed beneath her feet. She pressed the small receiver to the ground and listened. A soft hum filled her ears, vibrating in her bones. It was not the echo of wind nor the movement of sand. It was a machine, alive and waiting. The next morning they brought in stronger tools to pry the golden plates apart. The sound of metal striking stone echoed across the camp as the desert sun rose high. Mara watched nervously. Every strike against the doorway seemed to anger the silence around them. Finally, with a grinding roar, the plates loosened, revealing a dark passage that led downward into the earth. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of dust and time. The lamps flickered as if touched by some unseen force. The team cheered, excited at the discovery. Yusuf clapped Mara on the shoulder. "You see? Another great find. History will remember us." But Mara's eyes were fixed on the shadows beyond the doorway. She felt something watching, something patient and unblinking. They descended carefully, the narrow steps taking them deep underground. The walls shimmered with veins of gold, not dull but glowing faintly as though energy flowed within them. Strange markings twisted across the surface, glowing softly as they passed. "This is not just a tomb," Mara whispered. "It is something else." At the bottom, they reached a vast chamber. Statues of towering figures stood on either side, each plated in gold, each holding a staff tipped with a blade. Their eyes, made of polished crystal, reflected the light from the lamps. One of the workers laughed nervously. "Guardians. Every tomb has them." But Mara felt her throat tighten. The statue seemed too perfect, too precise. She stepped closer to one and touched its arm. The surface was smooth, colder than stone. It was not carved. It was built, Yusuf called from the center of the chamber. "Come, there is more." At the far wall stood a massive gate, its surface covered in shifting patterns. Mara stared as the designs moved slowly as though alive. It was not paint. The wall itself was flowing like water made of metal. Suddenly the hum grew louder. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Mara gasped and turned back to the statues. Their eyes were no longer dull crystal. They were glowing. A golden light filled the chamber, one pulse after another, steady as a heartbeat. The statues shifted slightly, their massive heads tilting forward. The workers froze, too frightened to move. Mara felt her heart hammering in her chest. She whispered, "They are not statues. They are watching us." For the first time in thousands of years, the Guardians stirred in their eternal duty, and the humans who had entered the tomb realized they were no longer alone. The chamber was silent except for the hum that now filled the air like the beating of a distant drum. The golden statues stood tall, their once lifeless eyes now glowing with steady light. The workers backed away, whispering prayers under their breath. Even Yusuf, who always laughed at old tales, could not hide the fear on his face. Mara stood frozen, staring at the nearest figure. Its head tilted slightly, the golden face catching the flicker of the lamps. She had studied many tombs, but nothing had ever moved like this. Her heart pounded, but a strange pull kept her from running. The sound of stone grinding against stone echoed through the chamber. One of the statues lifted its arm. Slowly, with the weight of ages, it shifted the staff in its hand. The movement was not clumsy but precise, like a soldier coming back to life after centuries of rest. The workers panicked. Some dropped their tools and scrambled for the stairs. Their shouts filled the chamber, but the guardians did not react. Instead, they turned their glowing eyes toward Mara and Yusuf. Yusuf held up his lamp as if the light could protect him. "They cannot be alive," he whispered. "It is a trick. Some kind of mechanism." But Mara shook her head. No machine from this time could last so long. This is not human work. The nearest guardian stepped forward. Each step was heavy, the ground shaking under its weight. Dust rained down from the ceiling as if the tomb itself trembled at its awakening. The other statues followed, breaking their stillness, moving in perfect formation. Their golden bodies gleamed, reflecting the lamplight in sharp flashes. The team stood trapped between fear and awe. Yusuf shouted for everyone to stay calm, but his own voice wavered. He turned to Mara. "Why are they looking at you?" Mara realized he was right. Though the guardians moved, their focus was fixed on her. Their eyes glowed brighter when she stepped forward, dimmer when she moved back. It was as if they recognized her, as if they had been waiting for her. One guardian lowered its staff, placing the blade against the stone floor. It knelt slightly, the golden armor folding in smooth, fluid motion. The others copied its action. A strange light spread across their chests, forming patterns that pulsed like living veins. Mara could barely breathe. She felt heat rise in her chest, not from fear but from something deeper, a connection she did not understand. "They know me," she whispered. "Or they know something inside me." The walls began to shift. The moving metal at the far end rippled and changed. Symbols formed on the surface, glowing in lines of fire. They were not normal hieroglyphs, but a mix of ancient script and something far more complex, like star maps and equations drawn together. The workers who had not fled pressed themselves against the walls, too afraid to speak. Yusuf's hand shook as he wrote quickly in his notebook, desperate to record what he saw. One of the guardians spoke. Its voice was not made of words but of sound, deep and resonant, vibrating through the chamber. The hum rose and fell like music from another world. Mara did not understand the language, but she felt meaning within it. A question, a challenge, a recognition. The sound wrapped around her mind, pressing her to respond. She raised her hand without thinking. "I am Mara," she said, her voice trembling. "I mean no harm." The guardian tilted its head. Then the golden light in its eyes softened. The sound shifted, no longer a challenge, but something gentler, almost like approval. Yusuf stared at her. "What did you do?" "I only answered," Mara said, though she herself was not sure. The chamber shifted again. The floor lit up with glowing lines, forming a path that led to the great gate at the far end. The guardians moved aside, their massive forms stepping back in unison, leaving the path clear for her. "They want you to go," Yusuf said quietly. Mara felt fear coil in her stomach, but her curiosity was stronger. She stepped forward, each footfall echoing through the silent hall. The guardians stood like golden mountains on either side, their eyes watching but no longer threatening. When she reached the gate, the metal ripples froze. The surface stretched and pulled back like water, opening into a doorway of light. Beyond it lay another chamber, darker, deeper, and filled with energy that made her skin tingle. She turned back to Yusuf. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with wonder. "This is no tomb," he said. "This is a vault," Mara nodded. She stepped through the gate. Inside, the air was colder, heavier, as if filled with invisible weight. The walls glowed with lines that formed constellations she did not recognize. At the center of the chamber stood a single pedestal. Resting upon it was a sphere made of crystal and gold, pulsing with light. The guardians did not enter, but they stood guard outside, their eyes fixed on her. Mara approached the sphere slowly. As she did, the light within it grew stronger, as if reacting to her presence. She reached out her hand but stopped inches away, afraid to touch it. Yusuf's voice came from behind. "Careful. We do not know what it is." Mara lowered her hand. She understood that the guardians had not been guarding treasure of gold or jewels. They had been guarding this. The sphere was the heart of the tomb, the reason for the eternal watch. She looked at Yusuf and whispered, "This was not built by men. This was left by something greater, and they trusted us to find it." Outside the chamber, the hum continued. The guardians stood ready, their golden eyes fixed forever on the relic, and Mara knew the world had changed the moment they awakened. The sphere glowed brighter as Mara stood before it. Its light pulsed like a heart, each beat filling the chamber with warmth. She could feel the energy running through her skin, humming in her bones. It was not just light. It was something alive. Behind her, Yusuf remained at the doorway, his notebook in hand, eyes wide with fear and wonder. "What is it, Mara?" he asked. His voice echoed softly, almost swallowed by the hum of the chamber. "I think it is a memory," Mara whispered. "Something left behind." She reached out slowly and let her fingertips touch the surface of the sphere. The moment she made contact, the entire chamber came alive. The walls flared with golden light, the constellations shifting into new patterns. The ground trembled softly, and the hum grew into a steady song. The sphere projected an image above itself, a figure wrapped in golden robes, tall and regal. His face was carved with lines of wisdom, his head crowned in the shape of a pharaoh's headdress. Yet his eyes glowed faintly, not like a man's but like the guardian's. The figure raised his hand and his voice filled the room. It was not in Egyptian. It was not in any language Mara knew. Yet somehow as the sound flowed, her mind shaped meaning from it. "I am the chosen of the stars," the figure said. "They gave me the name Pharaoh, but I was more than a king. I was a keeper." Mara stepped closer, her heart racing. "A keeper of what?" she whispered. The figure's gaze seemed to meet hers. "Of the heart of continuum," he said, motioning to the sphere. "It holds the memory of a people who walked the skies before your kind took its first breath. They placed it here in my care when they left this world. They swore it must never fall into the hands of those who destroy." Yusuf dropped his notebook in shock. "You mean aliens?" he muttered. "The Pharaoh was working with aliens." The projection continued. The figure spread his hands and images filled the chamber. Vast cities of shining towers, ships that floated above oceans, skies alive with light. Then came darker images, great wars, burning worlds, machines tearing each other apart. The voice carried sorrow. They were builders of wonders, but their own kind turned against them. The heart carries their knowledge, their histories, their warnings. With it, a new people could rise beyond the stars. Without it, the same destruction could come again. The vision shifted to show the desert. The Pharaoh stood with figures not human. Tall beings of light and metal placed the heart in his hands. Behind them, golden guardians stood in silence. "They gave me their soldiers," the Pharaoh said. "Machines bound to eternal duty. They will guard this place until the chosen come. They will not bow to thieves nor to conquerors, only to those who carry the mark of humanity's future." Mara's chest tightened. The guardians outside the chamber had bowed to her, not to Yusuf, not to the workers. To her. She had been recognized, though she did not understand why. The figure's voice grew softer. "I lived my life as ruler, but also as warden. My people saw me as divine, yet I was only a servant of a greater task. When I died, I was buried not with treasure, but with duty. To you who awaken this tomb, I say, the time has come. The stars are stirring again. Others will come for the heart. You must protect it." The image flickered, and for a moment the Pharaoh's face looked tired, human. "If you are wise, you will carry this knowledge with care. If you are brave, you will guard it with your life. And if you are strong, you will lead the guardians to stand once more. The choice is yours, heir of tomorrow." The projection faded and the chamber dimmed back into quiet. Only the pulsing light of the sphere remained. Mara stood still, her hand trembling as she pulled it away. The message felt heavy in her chest, as if the Pharaoh's duty had been passed directly to her. Yusuf finally found his voice. "This is impossible," he said. "This changes everything. History, religion, science, all of it." He shook his head, almost laughing in disbelief. "And you?" "It spoke to you." Mara turned toward him. "It was not speaking to me alone. It was speaking to all of us, to humanity. But the guardians, they chose me in this moment. I do not know why. Yusuf bent down to pick up his notebook, his hands shaking. If what we saw is true, then others will want this. The heart could become a weapon in the wrong hands. We cannot tell the world. Not yet. Outside the chamber, the guardians shifted, their golden eyes brightening. They had not moved into the inner sanctum, but they remained close, their presence a reminder of the promise they had kept through centuries of silence. Mara looked again at the heart of Continuum. The light inside it swirled, as if alive, waiting for her decision. She felt the weight of history pressing upon her shoulders. This is not just a discovery, she said quietly. It is a responsibility. For the first time since they had opened the tomb, Yusuf did not argue. He simply nodded, his face pale and thoughtful. The hum in the chamber deepened, almost as if the guardians themselves approved. Mara stood straighter. She did not know how or why, but she understood that the Pharaoh's message was clear. The world was not alone, and humanity's time to rise or fall was coming, and she knew the guardians would follow wherever the heart was taken. The desert outside the tomb lay quiet beneath the moonlight. The workers who had fled earlier were nowhere to be seen, leaving the camp half empty. Mara and Yusuf remained inside, still shaken by the Pharaoh's message. The guardians stood like statues in the chamber, their golden eyes glowing softly in the dark. Mara could not sleep. She sat near the heart of Continuum, watching its light pulse steadily. Each beat reminded her that this object was more than a relic. It was knowledge, power, and perhaps a key to humanity's future. Yusuf paced the room, muttering to himself, "If this is real, then someone else must know. That signal, the one we found, it could be reaching beyond Earth." Mara froze. He was right. The energy pulse had awakened the guardians, but what if it had also traveled far into space? What if others were listening? Her thought was answered sooner than she expected. High above Earth, beyond the reach of satellites, something stirred. Black ships glided silently into orbit, their hulls jagged and sharp, built for war rather than beauty. They belonged to scavenger warlords, raiders who moved between star systems in search of relics and technology to plunder. The pulse from the tomb had reached them, a beacon calling across the void. On the desert floor, strange lights appeared in the night sky. At first, Mara thought they were meteors, but the lights grew larger, breaking apart into multiple shapes. Ships descended, burning trails through the air as they came. The ground shook when they landed not far from the excavation site. The workers who had remained screamed and ran for cover. Yusuf rushed to the entrance, staring at the horizon where dark silhouettes of alien craft now stood. "They are here," he whispered, terror in his voice. "They came for the heart." Mara's stomach tightened. She looked back at the glowing sphere. The Pharaoh's warning echoed in her mind. "Others will come. You must protect it." The guardians moved for the first time since the message. Their golden frames straightened, the sound of grinding metal filling the chamber. One raised its staff, slamming the blade against the floor. The sound rang like thunder, and the others followed in unison. The hum of the tomb grew louder, as if preparing for war. Mara stepped back as the guardians marched toward the stairs. Their movements were no longer slow or uncertain. They moved with purpose, precise and unstoppable. The air trembled with their weight. Outside, the scavengers advanced across the sand. They were tall, armored beings with pale skin and cruel eyes, carrying weapons that glowed with sickly light. Their leader raised a clawed hand and shouted in a language no human could understand. Behind them, machines the size of tanks crawled across the desert, their cannons glowing. The first wave of intruders stormed toward the tomb, firing blasts of energy that lit up the night. The guardians met them at the entrance. Golden bodies marched out of the sand like an army long buried. Their staffs crackled with energy as they swung them, sending arcs of light crashing into the raiders. Shields of glowing force spread across their arms, deflecting blasts that could have destroyed stone. The desert became a battlefield. The scavengers shouted, their weapons raining fire, but the guardians stood like mountains, each strike knocking enemies into the sand. Their golden armor reflected the moonlight, making them look like suns walking the earth. Mara and Yusuf stood at the entrance, watching in disbelief. "They are protecting us," Yusuf said, his voice trembling. Mara nodded. "No, they are protecting the heart." Still, she knew the guardians were not invincible. For every scavenger they struck down, more poured from the ships. The machines advanced, their cannons blasting the sand into storms of fire. The guardians pushed back, but their numbers were few compared to the endless tide of raiders. Mara's chest burned with helplessness. She could not fight like them, but she remembered the Pharaoh's words. "If you are strong, you will lead the guardians to stand once more." She stepped forward, raising her voice above the chaos. "Guardians," she called, though she did not know if they could hear her. "Follow me. Protect this world." At once the golden eyes turned toward her. The guardians shifted, their formation tightening as if her words had reached their core. Their staffs glowed brighter, their strikes heavier. The tide of battle slowed. The raiders hesitated, surprised by the sudden strength of their enemies. Their leader snarled and shouted commands. From the largest ship a new weapon emerged, a towering walker, its metal legs crushing the sand as it marched forward. Its cannon glowed with deadly light, brighter than anything yet seen. Mara's courage wavered. The guardians fought with all their might, but the walker was built for destruction. A blast struck one guardian, shattering its chest. The golden giant fell, its body sinking into the sand. Mara's hands clenched into fists. For the first time, she felt the weight of command. She could not let them fall. She ran forward, placing her hand on the heart of Continuum. Energy surged through her, rushing into her veins like fire. She gasped but did not let go. The guardians glowed brighter in response. Their golden armor blazed with light, their strikes sharper, faster, more powerful. Together they pushed back, meeting the walker head-on. The desert shook with every clash. Golden warriors stood against invaders from the stars, refusing to yield. For the first time, humanity and the guardians fought as one, and the scavenger warlords realized that Earth was not the prey they had expected. The desert burned with the fire of battle. Golden guardians clashed with alien raiders, their staffs ringing like thunder, their shields holding strong against blasts of energy. The scavengers had numbers, machines, and weapons of destruction. Yet they struggled to break through the wall of gold that stood before the tomb. Mara stood near the heart of Continuum, her hand still tingling from the surge of energy she had felt before. When she had touched the sphere, the guardians had grown stronger. They had responded to her as if she were part of them. Yusuf crouched beside her, his face pale with dust and fear. "You felt it, didn't you? You controlled them somehow." Mara shook her head. "Not controlled, connected, they listened." She looked out toward the battlefield, her chest heavy with urgency. "If I can guide them, maybe they can win." Another blast shook the ground. The towering walker fired its cannon, striking two guardians and sending them crashing into the sand. Their golden frames cracked but did not shatter. They struggled to rise, sparks flickering across their chests. Mara could not stand still. She pressed her hand once more against the heart. This time she did not hesitate. The sphere pulsed and energy surged through her like fire and ice combined. She gasped, her knees trembling, but she kept her hand steady. Her vision blurred, and then suddenly she saw the battlefield not only with her eyes but through the glowing sight of the guardians. Their movements, their strength, their pain, it all reached her mind. She lifted her arm without thinking. On the battlefield, the guardians mirrored her motion. Their formation tightened, their staffs raised in perfect rhythm. The scavengers fired again, but the guardians crossed their shields together, forming a golden barrier that withstood the storm. Yusuf's eyes widened as he watched. "You are leading them. They follow you." Mara swallowed hard. She felt the weight of the guardians like 1,000 voices pressing into her thoughts. But they were not hostile. They were waiting, listening, ready. "Then I have to lead them well," she said, her voice steady now. The raiders roared, charging with blades of light and cannons blazing. Mara's mind focused. She pictured the guardians advancing. They obeyed, their golden forms moving like one giant army. Their staffs struck the ground, sending arcs of energy forward. The sand exploded under the power, knocking back the enemy lines. For the first time, the scavengers hesitated. The tide was shifting. Mara pushed harder. She imagined them surrounding the walker, striking its legs. The guardians responded instantly, leaping forward with impossible speed for their size. Their glowing blades cut into the metal legs of the giant machine. Sparks flew as the walker stumbled, its cannon shaking as it tried to fire again. The scavenger leader screamed in anger, ordering all his troops to protect the walker. But the guardians pressed on, glowing brighter with each strike. They were no longer just defending the tomb. They were fighting under command, fighting as a true army with a leader of flesh. Yusuf shouted from behind her, his voice filled with awe. "They are unstoppable with you guiding them. It is as if you were born for this." Mara's chest ached with the effort. She could feel every blow they gave and every strike they took. When one guardian fell, pain flashed in her heart, though her body was unhurt. Still, she refused to let go. She had been chosen by the heart, and now she understood why. The guardians surrounded the walker, their staffs striking in unison. With a final burst of light, they severed its last leg. The giant machine toppled into the sand, exploding in a storm of fire. The desert shook, and for a moment the battlefield went silent. The scavenger troops faltered. They had expected an easy raid, a simple theft of power from a forgotten world. Instead, they faced an ancient army reborn, commanded by a human who would not yield. Mara let out a long breath. Her vision cleared, and she pulled her hand away from the heart. The connection dimmed, though she could still feel the guardians waiting in the back of her mind. Ready if she called again, Yusuf helped her steady herself. "You did it. You turned the battle," but Mara shook her head. "No, this was only one fight. They will not give up so easily." As if to prove her right, new ships descended from the sky, larger than the first wave. The scavenger warlords were committing more forces. Lights cut through the night as reinforcements landed, sending shockwaves across the desert. The guardians raised their staffs again, prepared to fight, but Mara knew they could not stand forever. Humanity would need to rise with them. She turned to Yusuf. "We must tell the others. The world needs to know we are not alone anymore. This is bigger than us." Yusuf hesitated, then nodded. "But if the wrong people learn, they will try to use the heart as a weapon. We must be careful." Mara agreed, though her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon where the enemy ships glowed like falling stars. The Pharaoh's words echoed again in her mind. "If you are brave, you will guard it with your life. If you are strong, you will lead." She looked back at the guardians, their golden eyes burning in the darkness. They were more than machines. They were soldiers of eternity, waiting for humanity to take its place. The bond between flesh and machine had been made. And for the first time, the guardians were not just watchers of the past. They were warriors of the future. The desert glowed with fire as battle raged around the tomb. Mara stood on a small rise, looking down at the chaos below. The golden guardians moved like giants, their staffs blazing with energy, forming walls and striking down enemies with precision. The scavenger warlords poured wave after wave of soldiers and machines across the sand, yet nothing seemed to break the line of gold. Mara's heart pounded. The heart of Continuum pulsed in her chest, reacting to the guardians' movements. Every strike they made, every step they took, she felt it as if it were her own body. She had never known such power, yet she could not let fear rule her. The Pharaoh's words echoed in her mind. "If you are strong, you will lead the guardians to stand once more. Focus," she shouted, raising her hands. "Push them back. Protect the heart." The guardians responded instantly. Their golden bodies moved in perfect formation, a river of light flowing across the desert. Cannons and weapons of the raiders struck, but shields of energy shimmered around the guardians, deflecting every attack. The sand erupted in explosions, yet the guardians remained unbroken, advancing steadily toward the enemy. The scavenger warlords grew desperate. They unleashed a massive walker, larger than any Mara had seen. Its legs struck the ground with heavy force, each step shaking the desert. Its cannon fired, blasting guardians aside and tearing through the sand like molten fire. One golden figure fell to the ground, sparks flickering across its chest. Mara did not hesitate. She ran toward the heart of Continuum, placing her hands firmly on its surface. Energy surged through her, burning and cold at the same time. She closed her eyes and pictured the guardians surrounding the walker, attacking together with perfect timing. The guardians glowed brighter, moving as if their minds were one with hers. They leaped forward, their staffs slicing into the machine's legs. Sparks flew and the walker stumbled, its cannon faltering. The raiders around it hesitated, realizing their biggest weapon was failing. "Do not stop," Mara shouted, feeling the power flow through her. "Strike together." The guardians responded, their attacks synchronized perfectly. The walker crashed to the sand, its metal legs bending and breaking under the combined force. The desert shook with the impact, and the remaining raiders faltered, retreating slightly as fear spread among them. Yusuf ran to her side, shouting over the roar of battle. "You are doing it!" "You are guiding them perfectly." Mara's chest ached, not from fear but from the connection she shared with the guardians. She could feel every movement, every strike, every moment of effort. She realized she was no longer just a human on the battlefield. She was part of the army of eternity. The raiders regrouped, their leader screaming commands. More machines poured forward, larger than the last, and even more soldiers poured from the horizon. But the Guardians stood like mountains, golden and unyielding. Each attack Mara imagined, each direction she gave, they executed flawlessly. The sky was lit with fire and energy. Blasts from alien weapons carved paths through the desert, yet the golden light of the Guardians never dimmed. Their movements were precise, almost beautiful, a dance of war that inspired awe even in the hearts of their enemies. Mara pressed her hands harder against the heart. The energy surged through her, and for a moment she felt the Guardians' power in her own body. She could move with them, think with them, fight with them as if she were one of them. Every attack she imagined became real. Every defense she envisioned formed a shield around the heart and her companions. The battle reached its peak. The largest walker stood again, roaring, ready to crush the Guardians. Mara's mind raced. She focused on the heart, sending waves of energy to the Guardians. They moved as one, striking the walker from all sides. Sparks flew, metal bent and twisted, and finally, with a massive explosion, the walker fell completely. The ground shook and silence briefly fell over the battlefield. The remaining raiders looked at the destruction, fear spreading in their eyes. They had expected easy prey, but they had faced something more than human. They had faced warriors from another time, reborn to defend the heart. Mara lowered her hands from the heart, exhausted but resolute. The Guardians stood tall, some bearing scars of battle yet unbroken. Their golden eyes shone brightly, watching the horizon for any further threat. Yusuf came closer, awe written on his face. You did it. You turned the tide. You are more than a leader, Mara. You are a commander of eternity. Mara shook her head, feeling the weight of responsibility. This is not the end. They will return if we are not ready. The heart is powerful, and others will seek it. But for now, the tomb is safe. The Guardians have fulfilled their duty once more. The desert was quiet again, the fires dying down, the smoke rising toward the stars. Mara looked around at the golden figures, their armor glinting in the fading light. She felt a deep connection, stronger than anything she had ever known. This is only the beginning, she whispered. The Guardian's eyes seemed to acknowledge her words, ready for whatever might come next. The tomb of the eternal Pharaoh had stood for thousands of years, guarding the heart of Continuum. Now, under Mara's guidance, the Guardians had awakened and humanity had proven it could rise to meet the challenges of the universe, and the Golden Watchers would remain, ready to defend forever. The desert was calm under the rising sun. The battle had ended, leaving the sands scarred and smoldering. Mara stood at the top of a small dune, looking down at the tomb below. The Guardians, battered but unbroken, stood tall around the entrance, their golden bodies gleaming in the morning light. Mara's chest still ached from the connection she had shared with them. The heart of Continuum pulsed faintly in its chamber, calm now, as if satisfied with the day's events. She had never felt such power, nor such responsibility. Yusuf approached her, brushing sand from his clothing. The scavengers have retreated, he said. I think they will think twice before returning to Earth. Mara nodded. Yes, but that does not mean they are gone forever. The heart is a treasure beyond imagination. Others will come someday, and when they do, we must be ready. The Guardians remained silent, their eyes watching the horizon. Though they did not move, Mara felt their awareness, their presence. They were alive in a way humans had never known, and they trusted her as their leader. She stepped toward the entrance of the tomb. The golden statues moved slightly aside, allowing her to pass. She descended the steps to the inner chamber, where the heart of Continuum rested on its pedestal, glowing softly. She reached out and placed her hands on it. The energy flowed through her again, warm and steady, reminding her of the bond she shared with the Guardians. She could feel the history of civilizations long gone, knowledge of worlds beyond Earth, and the wisdom of the Pharaoh who had been chosen by the stars. This is not just a relic, Mara whispered. It is a responsibility, a promise. Yusuf stepped beside her. Do you think humanity is ready? He asked softly. Mara looked up at the golden eyes of the Guardians outside. They had waited through centuries of silence, guarding the heart until the right time. Now they had awakened, and humans had proven themselves capable of understanding. Yes, she said, if we stand together, we can be ready. We can protect this world and the future of the stars. Suddenly, one of the guardians moved forward, placing its massive hand gently on the entrance of the chamber. It lowered its head slightly, a gesture of respect. The others followed, forming a protective circle around the tomb and the heart. Mara felt a sense of peace she had never known. The guardians were not just machines or statues. They were living proof of a promise kept across millennia. They had waited for someone who could understand the value of life, the importance of wisdom, and the courage to defend it. She turned to Yusuf. "We cannot tell the world the truth yet," she said. "The heart must remain a secret until humanity is ready. But the guardians, they will always be here, watching, waiting, protecting." Yusuf nodded. "It is a heavy burden," he said. Mara placed her hand on his shoulder. "It is also an honor," she said, "and we will not be alone. The guardians are with us." The desert wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of energy hums from the guardians. The golden watchers remained standing tall, their eyes glowing in the sunlight. Their vigilance was eternal, and their trust in humanity had been earned. Mara stepped outside, standing beside the guardians. She looked out at the horizon, the endless desert stretching beyond sight. The world seemed smaller now, yet larger in the possibilities it held. "The heart will guide us," she whispered, "and the guardians will always watch." From that moment on, Mara became the first human recognized by the eternal soldiers of the Pharaoh. She was no longer just an archaeologist. She was the keeper of the heart, the chosen one to lead the guardians and protect humanity from threats beyond the stars. The desert returned to its quiet, but now it held a new story. The story of humans who had awakened an ancient power, who had proven courage, wisdom, and strength. The story of golden warriors who walked again to defend a world that had once been unaware of their existence. Mara looked at the heart one last time before leaving the chamber. Its glow pulsed gently, a reminder of the past and a guide for the future. She knew that one day, humans would explore beyond their world, and the knowledge contained within the heart would help them rise. For now, the guardians stood in silent watch, their golden forms glowing in the sun. They would wait for centuries if they had to, their eyes never leaving the tomb, their loyalty never wavering. They were eternal, and their vigil was unbroken. Mara turned back toward the desert, feeling hope and responsibility in equal measure. Humanity had been chosen. They had been tested, and they had stood strong. The golden guardians remained, a promise that would last forever. Gold watched forever, and humanity had earned its place among the stars. And in that quiet desert, under the rising sun, the tomb of the eternal Pharaoh remained safe, guarded by the bond between humans and machines, a bond that would endure for all time.